My fiancée falsely accused me and got me arrested. Taunting. Enjoy jail. What she didn't expect was that my one phone call went to my father, the captain of major crimes. He walked into the station and firmly asked the officer why his son was in handcuffs. My name is Marco, I am 31, and I work as a port logistics planner. I live in Rotterdam and my weeks are basically spreadsheets, shift calls, and early mornings. I do fine financially, nothing flashy, but stable. I like routine, and I am pretty direct when something feels off. My fiancée is Lena, 29. We have been together a little over 3 years. Engaged for 6 months. We do not have kids. We rent a 2-bedroom apartment together and split most bills. Wedding planning is technically in progress, even if it has felt like a slow fight. Lena can be sharp in a way that looks cute in public and mean in private. She corrects people for sport. She keeps score. She can turn any disagreement into a character trial where I am the defendant and she is the judge who already decided. For the last month, she has been weird about my phone and my schedule. Not suspicious like she thinks I am cheating, more like she wants leverage. She will ask where I am, then act bored when I answer, then later bring it up as proof I am hiding things. If I push back, she does that calm smirk and says I am getting emotional again. 2 nights ago, we argued over something stupid, a seating chart for her cousins, plus money, plus her saying my family never treats her like family. I said we should pause planning until we can talk like adults. She went quiet. Not sad quiet. Calculating quiet. Then she told me to sleep on the couch because she needed space. Yesterday morning I was making coffee when she walked in already dressed, bag packed, like she had rehearsed the scene. She said we need a break and she is going to her friend. I said fine, but we should talk about the lease and the deposits. That is when she stepped closer and said, with this nasty little grin, that I will not have to worry about deposits because I will be worrying about something else. 10 minutes later there was a knock. 2 officers. Lena behind them, arms folded, acting offended. She said I grabbed her and threatened her. The words came out too smooth, like she had practiced the exact version that would land. I tried to explain. They did not want to debate. One officer told me to turn around. Lena watched me get cuffed and leaned in close enough that only I could hear. She told me to enjoy jail. They walked me out past the neighbors like it was a show. Lena stayed in the doorway with that satisfied face, like she had just returned a defective product. I kept thinking there has to be some adult step in this process, where someone asks one follow-up question. It never came. In the car, I tried to keep my voice steady. I said there are cameras in the hallway and in the lobby. I said my phone has location history. I said check her story against anything. The officer in the passenger seat told me to save it for the station. The driver kept his eyes forward like I was already decided. At the station, they took my belt and my shoelaces and put my phone in a bag. I asked to call a lawyer. They said I could make one call after booking. My hands were still behind my back while they walked me through a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and cold coffee. The thing that kept looping in my head was the timing. Lena had been packed and ready. She chose the morning when my building would have people leaving for work. She chose the argument the night before to set up the couch story. This was not impulsive. This was a plan. When they finally took the cuffs off, my wrists had red lines. A desk officer read me my name like it was a label. Then a different officer came in with a clipboard and asked me to confirm my address and employer, like we were doing a customer intake. I asked what exactly she told them. He said he cannot discuss details. I asked if there was any evidence. He shrugged like evidence is optional when someone says the right words. I asked to make my call. They handed me a phone that looks like it has been dropped 1,000 times. My mind went through options fast. A friend who is a lawyer. My union rep. My manager. Then I pictured Lena at my apartment going through everything while I sit in a holding cell with no shoelaces. I also pictured her calling my mom to spin a story first. So I call my father. This is the part one never tell people because it sounds like I am making it up. My dad is a captain in major crimes. Not a TV version. A real one. He does not do favors. He is also not sentimental. We are not close in a warm way, but he is consistent. He picked up on the second ring. I said, Dad, I am at the station. I am being booked for domestic assault. It is Lena. It is not true. There was a pause that felt heavy. Then he asked one question. Which station? I told him. He said stay calm and do not answer questions without counsel. Then he hung up. 20 minutes later, the mood in that hallway shifted. People started moving quicker. A sergeant walked past and looked at me twice. Then the desk officer suddenly remembered my last name and stopped sounding bored. And I realized Lena probably thought my one call would be wasted on begging her to stop. She did not expect I would call the one person in the city who actually knows how the system works from the inside. About 30 minutes after I made that call, I heard my last name spoken in a different tone. Not casual, not annoyed, precise. My father walked in wearing a plain suit, not his uniform. He was not loud. He did not storm anything. He simply asked the desk officer why his son was sitting there in handcuffs without a formal statement taken from him yet. You could feel the temperature change in the room. The officer started explaining that there had been a complaint, that protocol required detainment, that they were in the process of booking. My dad listened without interrupting. Then he asked whether there was visible injury documented, whether there were independent witnesses, whether they had secured any camera footage from the building Lena herself claimed the incident occurred in. The answers were vague. They had not reviewed footage yet. They had not photographed any injury. They were relying on her verbal statement. My father nodded once and said something I have heard him say my whole life. Procedure exists to protect both sides. He was calm. That was the part that unsettled everyone. He was not defending me emotionally. He was dismantling the process logically. He requested that the supervising officer join them. Within minutes, a lieutenant came out. They stepped aside, but not far enough that I could not see the body language. My father stood straight, hands clasped behind his back. The lieutenant kept adjusting his belt. I was eventually brought into a small interview room. My cuffs were removed. The tone shifted from assumed guilt to cautious neutrality. The lieutenant asked me to walk through the morning from start to finish. I did. Slowly. I kept it factual. Coffee. Kitchen counter. Her packed bag. The thread about deposits. The knock. I mentioned the hallway cameras. I mentioned that she had been telling me for weeks that I was going to regret not prioritizing her. No dramatic speeches. Just sequence and timing. After I finished, my father asked one final question in that room. Has anyone verified whether the complainant is still at the residence? An officer left immediately. About 20 minutes later, he came back looking less confident. Lena was not at the apartment. Neighbors said she left in a rideshare right after the arrest. That detail mattered. If she was in immediate danger, why leave calmly and disappear before even giving a formal recorded statement at the station? The lieutenant's jaw tightened. My father did not look at me. He looked at the lieutenant and said, "I trust you will handle this thoroughly." For the first time since the cuffs clicked around my wrists, I felt something shift from panic to clarity. Lena thought this would scare me into submission. She thought a night in a cell would reset the power balance. What she did not factor in is that once you pull a lever like that, you do not control who else it moves. About an hour after my father arrived, the lieutenant came back into the room with a different tone entirely. He said they were going to release me pending further review. No charges filed at that moment. No formal arrest record beyond initial intake. That is a very careful sentence. Pending further review. I signed a temporary release form. They returned my belt and shoelaces. When I stepped back into the hallway, my father was waiting near the exit. He did not hug me. He did not ask if I was okay. He asked one question. Is there any part of her claim that can be misinterpreted? I said no. I never touched her. He held my gaze for a second, assessing. Then he nodded once. Good. Because this is no longer a relationship issue. This is a credibility issue. Outside the station, he finally explained what shifted things. An officer had reached Lena by phone and asked her to come in to finalize her statement. She said she was too shaken and needed time. That alone is not unusual. What was unusual was that she had already texted two mutual friends a very detailed version of events, complete with exact phrasing about me grabbing her wrist and threatening to ruin her life. The timing did not line up. The building manager was also contacted. Hallway footage showed her standing calmly outside the apartment door before the officers arrived. No visible distress. No attempt to leave in panic. She even adjusted her hair in the reflective elevator door. That does not prove innocence by itself, but it weakens urgency. My father told me something else that stuck. False allegations are rare, but when they happen, they tend to escalate, if not confronted immediately. If she realizes the system did not automatically destroy you, she might try again with more detail. He said I need to treat this like exposure management, not emotional fallout. I asked him directly if his involvement would create backlash. He said he did not interfere. He asked procedural questions. That is allowed. He also made it clear that if evidence supported her claim, he would not protect me. That is how he operates. When he dropped me off near my apartment building, he advised one thing. Do not go inside alone. Bring a neutral witness. Document everything. Change the locks if legally permitted. I called the building manager first. Lena is not on the lease. I am the sole tenant. That matters. Then I called my cousin who lives 15 minutes away and works freelance from home. He agreed to meet me there. As we walked toward the entrance, I could see our balcony door slightly open, and I realized Lena might not have expected me back this quickly. My cousin arrived before I went in. I explained the situation without dramatics. He knows my father's job, so he understood immediately why documentation mattered more than emotions. The apartment door was unlocked. That alone told me Lena was not done. We walked in together, and I started recording video on my phone. Not secretly, just openly narrating date and time. The living room looked mostly intact, but smaller things were off. The framed photo from our engagement dinner was gone. Her shoes by the entrance were gone. 2 of my watches from the hallway drawer were missing. In the bedroom, half her clothes were gone. Not packed carefully. Cleared. My laptop bag was open on the bed, but the laptop was still inside. My passport drawer had been pulled out and left crooked. She had not left in panic. She had curated what she took. On the kitchen counter, there was a printed screenshot of what looked like a text draft. It was not addressed to anyone yet. It read something about surviving emotional abuse and finally having the courage to involve the police. She had highlighted parts in yellow. My cousin just looked at me and said she is building a narrative. That is when my phone buzzed. It was Lena, not a call, a message. She wrote that I should start thinking about how this will look at work. She said arrests have a way of following people. Then she added that if I apologize publicly and admit I scared her, maybe she will consider telling the police she overreacted. There it was. The leverage attempt. I did not respond. Instead, I took screenshots and forwarded them to my father and to a lawyer my cousin recommended. I also emailed the building manager requesting immediate lock change authorization since the lease is solely in my name and there has been a domestic disturbance allegation. The manager replied within 15 minutes approving it due to safety concerns. I called a locksmith. While we waited, Lena sent another message. This one less polished. She said I embarrassed her by questioning the wedding. She said I needed to learn consequences. I did not analyze it. I did not argue. I blocked her number immediately. Then I blocked her on every platform I could think of. Messaging apps, social media, email filters set to archive anything from her address automatically. If she wanted communication, it could go through a lawyer. That decision felt cleaner than any reply would have. When the locksmith arrived, I showed him my ID and the lease copy from my email. He replaced the cylinder while my cousin stood in the hallway as witness. I did not feel angry at that point. I felt clear. If someone is willing to weaponize the legal system to win an argument, you do not negotiate with them. You remove access. By the time the new keys were in my hand, Lena was blocked everywhere. She just did not know she no longer had a door to come back to. The first quiet hour after blocking her was almost unsettling. No more buzzing. No more calculated threats disguised as wounded messages. Just silence and the metallic sound of the new lock clicking into place. My cousin stayed for a while. We made a basic inventory of what was missing and photographed every room. I emailed the photos to myself and to the lawyer so there was a time-stamped record. I also wrote a short factual summary of the day while it was fresh. Not emotional, just sequence. Around early evening, my father called. He said Lena had finally agreed to come in to formalize her statement. According to him, her version had already shifted slightly. Now she claimed I grabbed her arm near the bedroom door instead of the kitchen. Small detail, but inconsistent with what she told the responding officers. He also told me something more interesting. She had mentioned during her statement that I often threaten her with my father's position. That part was completely fabricated. I have never once used his job in an argument. In fact, I go out of my way not to mention it because I hate the implication. My father said that particular addition raised eyebrows. It suggested motive. If she believed she needed to paint me as someone who weaponizes authority, that means she anticipated scrutiny. The hallway footage had already been reviewed. No visible distress when officers arrived. No visible marks on her arms in the elevator mirror reflection. Again, not definitive proof of anything, but it weakened urgency. The lieutenant apparently asked her directly whether she sought medical evaluation. She declined. By late evening, I received a formal notice by email that the complaint was under review and no charges were being filed at this time due to insufficient corroboration. Not dismissed. Not fully closed. Under review. That is important, because it means the allegation exists on paper. About an hour after that email, my cousin's phone buzzed. Lena had messaged him since she could no longer reach me. She told him I was spiraling and that she feared for her safety because I changed the locks. That was fast. She pivoted from punishment to victim narrative within hours. I asked my cousin not to reply. Instead, I had him forward the message to me and to the lawyer. Then I did something that probably looks cold from the outside. I called my employer. I asked to speak to HR and my direct supervisor together. I informed them that a false domestic allegation had been made, that no charges were filed, and that I wanted it documented in case any external inquiry surfaced. I refused to let her control the first version of the story at my workplace. Control of narrative matters. And if Lena thought embarrassment would break me, she underestimated how comfortable I am with documentation and process. But what I did not anticipate was how quickly she would escalate once she realized silence did not scare me. The next morning, Lena escalated exactly the way my father predicted. She sent a long email to my mother. I know because my mom forwarded it to me without commentary. The message painted a very polished version of events. She described years of subtle intimidation. She implied I had anger issues. She mentioned the arrest repeatedly, carefully avoiding the fact that no charges were filed. It was written for sympathy, not accuracy. I did not reply to her. I responded to my mother instead. I sent her the timeline, the police release notice, and screenshots of Lena's messages about teaching me consequences. My mother is not dramatic. She read everything and simply said this is not normal behavior. By midday, the lawyer called me. He said based on the messages Lena sent after the arrest, especially the part offering to retract in exchange for a public apology, there is potential evidence of malicious intent. He advised me not to threaten anything, not to contact her, and to preserve every piece of communication. He also suggested something I had not considered. File a formal report regarding the coercive messages. Not to retaliate, to create a record. That afternoon, I went back to the station voluntarily and provided the screenshots. I kept it factual. I explained I had blocked her and did not intend further contact. The officer documenting it seemed more careful with his wording this time. While I was there, I learned Lena had called earlier asking whether I had been formally charged yet. That detail settled any lingering doubt. She was not afraid of me. She was waiting for damage confirmation. When I returned home, I found a small padded envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was my engagement ring. No note. It would have been dramatic if I did not know her patterns. This was not closure. This was positioning. If she returned the ring first, she could later claim she ended it because she feared me. I placed the ring in a drawer and documented its arrival with a photo and timestamp. There is something unsettling about watching someone shift from partner to adversary in less than 48 hours. But once you see the strategy, you stop taking it personally. And Lena was very much still strategizing. 2 days passed without direct contact from Lena. That did not mean she was inactive. A mutual friend called me that evening. He sounded uncomfortable. Lena had hosted a small gathering at another friend's apartment and told everyone she narrowly escaped a violent situation. She did not name me directly at first, but she let people connect the dots. By the end of the night, she was openly saying I was arrested for assault. He told me because he knows me well enough to question it. I thanked him and asked one thing. Did she mention charges? He said no. Just arrest. Selective wording again. I did not try to defend myself through him. I simply emailed the lawyer summarizing what I had been told. Then I drafted a short, neutral message and sent it to a small group of close friends. I stated that an allegation had been made, that no charges were filed due to lack of corroboration, and that I would not be discussing it further. I attached the official notice. No insults. No counter-accusations. Control the narrative with documents, not emotion. Later that night, my father called with an update. The complaint had been marked as closed pending no further evidence. Not proven false, but not moving forward. That distinction matters legally. It means there is no active case. He also told me something that confirmed my instincts. During her second follow-up call with the station, Lena asked whether filing a complaint guarantees a restraining order. That question is not something someone asks if they are simply scared. That is someone exploring leverage. At that point, I made a final logistical decision. I informed the landlord that Lena would not be returning and provided written notice that only I am authorized to access the unit. I removed her name from shared utility accounts. I changed all passwords linked to joint services. Streaming, internet, cloud storage. Clean separation. The strangest part is that I was not heartbroken. I was disappointed in my own miscalculation. I mistook sharpness for strength. I mistook control for competence. And now the wedding venue was still booked under both our names, which meant there was one last practical conversation left, whether I liked it or not. The venue contract was under both our names, but I paid the deposit from my account. I emailed the venue coordinator first thing in the morning. I kept it simple. The wedding was canceled due to a personal matter. I asked what documentation they needed to release me from liability and whether the deposit was refundable or transferable. Within an hour, Lena emailed them too. She claimed the event was postponed due to emotional distress caused by me. She asked them not to cancel anything yet and said there might be legal proceedings. The coordinator replied to both of us requesting a joint written confirmation to cancel or a legal order. Predictable. Instead of arguing with Lena, I forwarded the contract to my lawyer. He drafted a short formal notice stating the engagement was terminated and that I was withdrawing consent for the event. He requested written confirmation of cancellation and clarity on deposit allocation. That same afternoon, Lena emailed me from a new address since she was blocked everywhere else. She accused me of trying to financially sabotage her. She said if I cancel the venue unilaterally, she will tell everyone why. I did not respond to her. I forwarded it. By early evening, the venue confirmed in writing that without mutual consent, they would retain the deposit and release the date. I made the decision immediately. I authorized forfeiture of my portion. It was not a small amount, but it was finite. Predictable loss is better than ongoing leverage. An hour later, Lena sent another email. Short this time. She wrote that I was overreacting and ruining both our reputations. That sentence was the clearest one she had written all week. Not safety. Not fear. Reputation. I realized something uncomfortable. The arrest was not about hurting me physically. It was about narrative dominance. If she could label me publicly first, she controlled the breakup story forever. But she miscalculated two things. 1. I document everything. 2. I do not negotiate under threat. By the end of that night, the venue date was released. The deposit was gone. The engagement was legally and practically dead. And for the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, there were no open threads left for her to pull, which meant the only thing remaining was whether she would try one last move, or finally accept that the leverage failed. There was one last move. 3 days after the venue was canceled, I received a formal letter from a lawyer representing Lena. It alleged emotional abuse and claimed I forced her out of the apartment by changing the locks. The timing was not random. The letter arrived the same morning. She posted a long statement online about reclaiming her life from a controlling partner. She did not use my name, but anyone who knew about the canceled wedding could connect it. The lawyer's letter demanded financial compensation for relocation expenses and half of the wedding deposit. It hinted that if I did not cooperate, she would pursue civil action and seek a protective order. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer and went to work. By the afternoon, my lawyer responded formally. He attached the lease showing I was sole tenant. He attached the message where Lena offered to retract her police statement in exchange for a public apology. He attached confirmation that no charges were filed due to lack of corroboration. He also stated clearly that any further defamatory statements would result in counterclaims. No threats, just structure. 2 days later, Lena's lawyer replied again. The tone had softened. They said their client wished to resolve matters privately and withdraw previous demands. Translation. They reviewed the documentation. That same week, Lena removed her online post. There was no apology. There never would be. But there was silence. It has been 4 months now. No new allegations. No legal action. No indirect messages through friends. The complaint remains on record as reviewed and closed without charges. That part will likely never disappear completely. I am realistic about that. What I learned is simple. When someone is willing to weaponize systems to win an argument, the relationship is already over. The only question is how cleanly you exit. I lost a deposit. I lost a fiancé. I lost the version of the future I thought I had scheduled. What I did not lose was my credibility. And once I understood that was the real target, the rest became procedural. If you are reading this because you are in something similar, document everything. Do not argue under threat. And never assume someone will stop escalating just because you feel hurt. Sometimes the most stable move is the quiet one. Close the door. Change the lock. Keep the record. Then move forward.